Morning, I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take for Market Rebellion. And again, fireworks to start off the week. It's been great. You take a look at Tuesday, and now we're already into Wednesday. It's hump day, of course. But as we get into Wednesday, let's look back for Tuesday for just one moment, because the fact that the markets actually started off pretty strong, they looked pretty impressive, and that faded very, very rapidly. As a matter of fact, the S&P 500 was up over 18 points. That sort of faded. We also saw the Dow Industrials was actually trading pretty nicely, had a pretty strong start to the day. That faded, actually floated down into the red before actually finishing, call it close to flat. And the NASDAQ, it started off pretty strong. It actually stayed pretty strong. It stayed pretty strong throughout all the way into the close, up about 135 points. And some of the leadership there was in some of the names that you're very familiar with seeing leadership from. We had Tesla, that was up about 7% yesterday on some really heavy option volume, about 1.7 million contracts trading yesterday. Netflix up about 4%. You had Qualcomm, so you obviously know the chips have a little participation here as well. That was up nearly 3%. But you look over at technology as just a segment or a sector, it was up about 1%. It wasn't flying to the upside, but certainly a nice strong day. But the SMH, I mentioned chips a second ago with Qualcomm, that was up about 2% yesterday. So continued strength that we have been watching there. And biotech. Now, we've been talking about this for a little while now. We talked about Monday. Very little coverage, and yet biotech had an extremely strong day there when we look at the XBI and the IBB. Again, yesterday, up about 1% again. It was names like Alexion and Regeneron and Amgen certainly powering that. When you look over at the chips, it was not only Qualcomm, but you also had some participation. Qorvo, Intel has just been stair-stepping a little bit higher each and every day, and that's something to keep an eye on. And when we look over at the technology space, a couple of the usual names, but a couple of new ones as well. We had Autodesk, Fiserv, we had Salesforce.com, Microsoft, familiar name, Cisco, another familiar name. So we've been seeing a little bit more of the older tech names also participating as well on some of these bigger days. I mentioned NASDAQ up about 135 points. So technology, biotech, chips, all of that contributing very nicely. Where was it not really performing very well? As a matter of fact, performing poorly. Caterpillar, you look over at the Dow, CAT was down about 3% yesterday. The XLI closed near the lows of the session, as a matter of fact, Boeing and Honeywell and 3M. But then you look over at the financials, and I mentioned this yesterday, the financials, can they put any kind of a back-to-back-to-back kind of a day, any kind of a rhythm? And we talk about the XLF all the time around that 25 level. Well, again, we're below that 25 level once again. And why is that? Well, very interesting. I've been talking about this for JP Morgan for a really long time. $100, the sustainability, and matter of fact, let's correlate that right there with the XLF. To stay above 100, can JP Morgan stay above 100? It's jumped up, it's held on for a couple of days, and then sifted right back down. As a matter of fact, yesterday, finishing under 100, you had Goldman Sachs down about 1.5% or so. Citi getting smashed yesterday. That was down nearly 7% on the day. That really has been a head scratcher on why that name has been specifically such an underperformer. Bank of America down 2%. You get the idea. The financials still struggling, and it's been a struggle. They've had some days. They've moved to the upside. We talked about, as a matter of fact, just this past week, we talked about the regionals having some participation and a little bit more participation, but we aren't really seeing as much from the big banks, and that's something that is a little bit concerning. Lastly, Apple. Yesterday was the big day. Everybody was talking about all day. Had a wild range from 113 to 119. That's a pretty nice wide range for the stock. Finished smack dab in the middle, right around 115 and a half. So not a whole lot to read from that, other than I think that some folks may have been anticipating something more about the phone. That's not what they got, and so there was some disappointment potentially there. But that was something that it seemed like should have been built in. That story was out there, so that seemed like that should have been built in. But nonetheless, that was sort of the direction of how we were looking in the markets and how we were looking at Apple specifically. The VIX, 25, 26. We've been talking about this for a while. We've had some pops here and there, not very sustained, very similar to the financial. A pop, can't sustain it, pull back down. And on VIX's case, it continues to get a little bit lower and a little bit lower. We're not back to those 21s where we were, but here we are at 25, 26, certainly much lower. Had another nice day of volume again. Now, we weren't over 30 million, but 27.5 million contracts, still a very, very nice day, and a lot of participation and a little bit wider distribution yesterday of some of those options of that 27.5 million. Although Apple, Tesla, some of those names are always going to be somewhere at the very top of that. Now, overnight, we had some earnings from Adobe. This is a name that sprinted into earnings, and you do get concerned. When you see stocks sprinting into earnings, oftentimes you say, well, they better perform. They better give us the numbers, or that stock's going to sell back off again. Adobe delivered. Adobe absolutely delivered. They were up about 2.5% on the day yesterday. They were up at about 3% in the after hours after they slammed the earnings. Absolutely crushed the earnings. Revenue was also a beat, and they guided higher. All three, the triple threat, they delivered on all three, and that's why that stock had a really, really nice bump last night and into today. As a matter of fact, I'm looking right now, just to give you a real quick look early. We aren't even a half hour into the trading day. I got a wild day in front of me. Not with CNBC, not going to be doing that, but a lot of stuff going on with the Big Ten and a lot of football commentary today along with the market. So there's a lot to go into today. That's why we're doing it a little bit early right now. Dow up about 75 points. I got the NASDAQ up about 25 points, which is interesting. You know, we started off the day, the Dow was up about 90. NASDAQ was about flat, S&P up about 10. Now we've got the S&P still up about 10, but NASDAQ's pulled up a little bit. It was up a little higher. It was up about 45, 50 points. Now it's up about 25 points. And the Dow's been fluctuating anywhere between up 50 and 100. So here we are now at about 77. So all of it sort of in line with where the expectations were as we were coming into today. Now, lifting the Dow. Why was the Dow up close to 100 points, 90 points, now up about 75 points? Well, Salesforce, certainly one of those catalysts out there. Intel, as I mentioned, Amgen. So you're looking at healthcare, Merck, and also throw in good old IBM participating to the upside. So some old school tech and some chips when I'm talking about Intel and IBM. And those are the names right now that are definitely at least having an impact to the upside right now in terms of the Dow. Now, we also have Vertex, we've got Biogen, we've got Zoom, we've got Western Digital, we've got NXPI. Well, I mentioned some chips once again when I'm mentioning some of these various names or semiconductor space, but also biotech. Those are actually having a pretty nice day as well, influencing also the markets. FedEx, great numbers as we talked about. FedEx, UPS also along for the ride as both those stocks move into the upside today and then helping out the S&P. There's no doubt about that. Crude up $1 today. That's a little bit surprising. We haven't seen very many days where we've seen some up days. We've seen some flat days, but a nice little move right now in crude, and some of the stocks are reacting to that. So the VIX trading right now around 25 and a half, right in that sort of range. Actually, we did just jump up. Sorry. We're up about 26.30 right now. We were around 25 and a half. So 26.30, a little bit more into that VIX right now. But as I said earlier, trading 25, 26, it's sort of staying in that very tight range. You look at healthcare, that's actually performing pretty nicely today. Financials, barely flat. It flat to negative is the way I would view it right now. And unfortunately, we'll be watching that, but we've got to see what's going to go on with that. We've also got the Fed later on today, so there's a lot of different things in play. Got some unusual option activity for you. One of the names that's flying to the upside today is Tapestry. And TPR, very interesting name. It's moved up. It's trading around 1840 right now, and that's right out of the gate. As I said, we're not even 30 minutes into the trading day. That was the first stock that hit on the unusual options today, and that thing's on a nice move to the upside with the buyer of 6,500 of the September 18 calls. Now, this is interesting. Stock, as I said, 1840. These are the September 18 calls. They have today, tomorrow, and Friday, then they expire. They're already in the money by 40 cents based upon where that stock was when they bought them. So not a lot of premium in these options. So basically a play on, can this stock continue to make this move and make this move a little bit higher? It's got 3 days to do it if you include today. So we'll see. That, by the way, is the third bullish hit in the last week for Tapestry. So that says something about the direction, and they've been right, because certainly today we're having a pretty nice up day in that stock already. Can there be a little bit more? Somebody seems to be thinking that there is with that buy of 6,500 of the in the money, not out of the money, in the money calls that we're seeing right now. Guys, I wear this shirt oftentimes. I've got multiple different shirts. I've got Bull, I've got the Take, I've got all kinds of different Giddy Up shirts and stuff. This one right here is one of my favorites, a great golf shirt. The guys over at the Minnesotan, if you're ever interested in some of this apparel and hats and all the rest of it, just get a hold of the Minnesotan. As a matter of fact, these guys are unbelievable, and they have been contributors to, as a matter of fact, last week they gave us a very nice check, contributors to the Twin Cities Lyme Foundation, where we are trying to help people to get to a Lyme literate doctor. It's not just during the gala. And it's not just during the week. This is something that's year round, and we've been working very, very hard and hoping that we can raise as much money to get as many folks that are maybe waiting in line right now to be able to get diagnosed by a Lyme literate doctor to find out exactly what they've got, put them on the protocol, and get them started in the right direction to lead a much better life, hopefully. Folks, have a great day of trading. It's going to be a wild one. Big Ten football. Is it back? We'll talk about that later on as well. Have a great day of trading, folks.